A deafening explosion ripped through the skies over Ahmet on the afternoon of June 12th. A massive fireball plunged into a densely populated residential area near the airport, unleashing a nightmare no one could have imagined. It wasn't a car accident. It wasn't a house fire. It was the wreckage of a Boeing 787 Dreamliner plummeting from just 180 meters less than 5 minutes after takeoff. 242 lives on board. No distress call. Clear skies, perfect weather. And yet the plane fell. But the most haunting question remains: why did no one have time to react? No chance to survive? Was this a tragic accident, or undeniable proof of a secret buried deep within the aviation industry? The doomed takeoff. The Boeing 787 Dreamliner flight AIY-1 departed runway 23 at Ahmedabad International Airport at 13:38 on June 12th. On board were 230 passengers and 12 crew members. The flight was bound for the UK, set to last over 8 hours. Weather conditions were ideal: clear skies, light wind, 6 km visibility. Yet less than 5 minutes after takeoff, the crew issued an emergency signal. That was the beginning of one of the deadliest air disasters of the year, a crash no radar or prediction system could foresee. The distress signal was sent when the aircraft had barely climbed a few hundred meters, an alarmingly low altitude. There was no storm, no mid-air collision, no engine fire reported via radio. The problem emerged too quickly and too unnaturally. In under 300 seconds, one of Air India's most advanced aircrafts had become falling metal. Every safety protocol was bypassed by something no one fully understood in time. Flight Radar 24 showed the aircraft reached only 190 meters before losing signal. Its speed was 32 km/h, fast enough to fly, but not enough to climb. Its flight behavior was abnormal. It didn't ascend, it stalled, then lost control. This could indicate a loss of lift. The question is, how could a relatively young plane with a clean record, flying to major cities like Tokyo and Paris, fail to stay airborne at such a low altitude? This flight never truly left danger. It never really flew. Radar exposes the undeniable. The final signal recorded by Flight Radar 24 wasn't a scream. It was raw data, a vertical descent rate of about 1 meters per minute. This wasn't a controlled adjustment. It was a clear sign of aerodynamic failure. In aviation, that kind of descent means one thing: gravity has taken over. The aircraft wasn't climbing. It was sinking. No directional change. No horizontal momentum. It was falling and falling like it never belonged in the sky. Footage from the ground captured a haunting image. The plane's nose tilted upward desperately, while the tail sank like being dragged by an invisible force. The contrast between its posture and actual movement proved one thing: lift was absent. The fuselage failed to generate enough thrust to break free from inertia. In perfect weather, this made no sense, but radar doesn't lie. What betrayed the aircraft wasn't data, it was the illusion of total safety. Experts identified this as a classic case of aerodynamic loss of control. When a plane can't maintain lift, two causes emerge. Either the engines failed to generate thrust, or the flight control system malfunctioned catastrophically. One theory stood out. A software error may have caused the plane to misread its position, sending false signals. If that's the case, then what killed 269 people wasn't gravity, it was corrupted code. When systems believe in a false altitude or trajectory, there's no warning, just a fall that no pilot can stop. A crash with no survivors. The Boeing 787 fell into a residential zone just kilometers from the airport, a near vertical descent. It struck the dormitory of a medical university, a place filled with students and young doctors. The explosion created a fireball tens of meters high, engulfing the building within seconds. Part of the tail rested on the roof, the fuselage shattered, consumed in flames. This wasn't just an air disaster, it was a ground-level massacre. No one stood a chance. Passengers had no time to react before being crushed by velocity and fire. The building's lower levels collapsed completely. Police confirmed over 30 bodies were recovered from a single building. Rescue forces stated many were still trapped beneath the rubble. The blaze spread rapidly, smoke was thick, and responders couldn't reach the site for hours. Every minute lost erased another sliver of survival. There were 22 people on board, 230 passengers, and 12 crew. Among them were 169 Indian citizens, 53 British, 3 Portuguese, and 1 Canadian. At least 11 children were aboard. The tragedy extended beyond the aircraft. 28 additional victims on the ground were confirmed dead due to the explosion. That brought the total death toll to 269 lives lost in mere minutes. This was one of India's deadliest aviation disasters in years, offering no chance of survival, except for one unbelievable exception. The flight was never safe. A video captured by a previous passenger on flight AI-171 showed critical malfunctions. The air conditioning system wasn't working, and the in-flight entertainment was completely down. These signs were dismissed as minor. But in aviation, small anomalies are early warnings. The issue wasn't just hardware, it was operational mindset. Allowing a Dreamliner with evident faults to fly an international route reflects a systemic problem profit, prioritized over safety. No aircraft showing unresolved technical issues should ever take off on an 8-plus-hour transcontinental flight. But AI-171 was cleared for takeoff without a comprehensive inspection. The overlooked faults raised serious concerns about maintenance and approval procedures. Why would one of the most advanced aircrafts fly with broken environmental systems and possibly deeper failures lurking unseen? In aviation, every minor fault demands full investigation. Here, warnings were ignored, protocols shortened, and red flags silenced. The crash wasn't a sudden glitch, it was the end result of repeated negligence. Screens flickering, no airflow. These aren't trivial issues. They were early signs of structural decay, and no one acted. When the Dreamliner exploded over Ahmedabad, it wasn't unpredictable. It was inevitable. A disaster scripted by complacency and signed in smoke. Fuel a floating bomb. AI-171 was a long-haul international flight to the UK, and thus fueled to full capacity. Technically correct, but practically catastrophic. When disaster strikes during takeoff, when altitude is low and airspeed unstable, that fuel becomes a bomb. The plane carried tons of jet fuel at the time of impact, transforming the fuselage into a firestorm. Not just an air crash, but an inferno that engulfed everything in reach. The impact with the dormitory created a fire so intense that first responders couldn't access the site in time. The volume of fuel burned at extreme temperatures, cracking concrete, melting metal, and reducing bodies to ashes. At least 20 corpses were found in just one building. Rescuers described the scene as a maze of charred remains. Many others remained trapped, but no one expected survivors under such heat. Ironically meticulous preparation for a long flight. Full fuel tanks became the catalyst for maximum destruction. Had the crash occurred hours later, after fuel had burned off, the devastation might have been reduced. But when planes fall fully loaded, they fall like weapons. Refueling protocols weren't violated, but the assumption that all takeoffs succeed was. When things go wrong during climb-out, even a textbook checklist becomes a death trap. The system didn't break. It functioned with deadly consequences. The only survivor, and the paradox of life. Among 29 deaths, one man survived, And that fact alone makes this crash harder to explain. The sole survivor was seated in 11A near the emergency exit. According to police and witnesses, he jumped out in the final seconds before the plane ignited. He was found with serious injuries to his chest, eyes, and legs, but alive. In a landscape of smoke and scorched metal, his existence seemed impossible, a miracle ripped from the jaws of death. He recalled when he awoke there were bodies everywhere, and the air was burning. I stood up and ran. Someone pulled me into an ambulance. He had only been in India for a few days visiting family and was returning to the UK with his brother. They sat in different rows. After the crash, he couldn't find him. Worse than surviving was searching for loved ones among lists of the dead. Survival wasn't relief, it was trauma incarnate. And so the questions began. Why was seat 11A the only safe place? Was it its proximity to the exit, or pure randomness? Did he jump, or was he thrown? These remain unanswered, but analysts agree on one point. If one person survived, then survival was possible for a second, for a seat for a miracle. Perhaps others could have lived if the flames came slower, if the angle was different, if someone had responded seconds sooner. One survivor is not just hope, it's haunting proof, a shock to modern aviation. The aircraft that fell was a Boeing 7878 Dreamliner, a marvel of 21st century aviation. It had never experienced a fatal crash since entering service. At just 11 years old, AY-171 had completed flights to Australia, Paris, and Tokyo. Lauded for its fuel efficiency, stability, and safety, it was considered one of the world's most reliable aircraft. And yet it fell under perfect skies 5 minutes into flight, delivering a shattering blow to aviation's greatest promise. Aviation experts called it unthinkable, a crash that should never happen. Takeoff is critical, but the Dreamliner has multiple backup system sensors and software redundancies. For such a plane to fall from the sky meant rethinking everything we trust. Had we become overconfident? Had belief in tech blinded us to the lurking flaws no one wanted to face? This accident asked a brutal question. If even a Dreamliner can fail at 190 meters, what is truly safe? Aviation demands absolute precision. But sometimes one software bug, one faulty reading, or one skipped inspection is enough to slaughter hundreds. AI-171 didn't just fall, it tore down the myth of Boeing's invincibility. And when icons fall, they don't just hit the ground, they drag entire industries down with them. Bird strike or software failure. Following the crash, some Indian aviation analysts speculated a bird strike during takeoff. Large birds can damage engines and reduce thrust. But other experts dismissed the idea. Modern airliners like the 787 can handle single bird impacts. One bird doesn't crash a Dreamliner. The truth may lie deeper in code, not feathers. Technical analyses soon pointed to something far more disturbing: software or flight control failure. A bizarre observation caught attention. Landing gear was deployed, but flaps were retracted. This is highly irregular. During takeoff, flaps must extend to generate lift. If the system retracted them due to faulty logic or data corruption, the plane would be unable to climb, essentially flying blind. Aviation expert Jeffrey Thomas called the flight path unnatural. The plane didn't bank or roll. It flew horizontally, then nosedived like preparing to land. This supports the theory that the flight computer misread its face. A digital misfire made the aircraft believe it was descending, not climbing. If true, it wasn't mechanical failure, it was suicide by software. And AI-171 reminds us, when we give machines the power to fly, we also give them the power to kill if even one instruction goes wrong. Investigation truth or cover-up, both black boxes. The cockpit voice recorder, CVR, and flight data recorder, FDR, were recovered swiftly. India's AAIB, the US NTS, the UK AI, Boeing, and GE Aerospace launched a joint investigation. Yet, as of the latest reports, no official findings have been released. Meanwhile, media cited rescue teams confirming at least water bodies recovered, with more presumed trapped in wreckage. So the real question becomes how much truth will ever be revealed. This isn't just a technical failure. It's a crisis touching Boeing governments and aviation regulators. If software or flight control systems are to blame, it could trigger mass grounding of 787s worldwide.
Not a word of this.
On the other hand, blaming bird strike is simpler, cleaner, and more convenient. But convenience rarely aligns with truth. Aviation is secretive and driven by financial pressure. Truth can be delayed, softened, or spun. The question is no longer, why did the plane crash? But who will dare to speak the truth? Wasn't just a physical collapse, it's a moral one. It tests the ethical boundaries of every stakeholder: engineers, airlines, regulators, media. When lives hang in the balance alongside profits and reputations, what chance does truth really have? The sky does not forgive. In aviation, there is no margin for error, not even the smallest. When AI-111 lost thrust just minutes after takeoff, two lives were reduced to seconds. At 190 meters, there is no recovery. No human skill can correct it. No automation system has time to reboot. This was not a warning. It was a death sentence executed in silence. Technology may be cutting edge. Procedures may be strict. But one software flaw, one faulty sensor, or one overlooked maintenance step is enough to burn hundreds alive. This catastrophe unfolded under perfect skies on a record-clean aircraft designed to never fall. But the sky doesn't care about marketing. It doesn't reward certificates. It reacts to one thing, only arrogance. And this time, the price was 20 lives. The AI-171 crash is a global wake-up call. The more advanced technology becomes, the easier it is to forget our own limits. No system is flawless. No flight is immune to failure. The sky is cold, impartial, and merciless. One error, whether human software or avian, can end in a fireball over innocent rooftops. The sky does not forgive. And this time, it taught that lesson in blood. AI-171 didn't just fall from the sky. It brought down the global illusion of aviation's untouchable safety. A fall under clear skies with no pilot error, no warning, and no survivors. Only silence wreckage, and one man left to remember. When technology fails, when software kills, when a bird or a broken line of code decides fate, it's no longer just an accident. It's an indictment of an industry that dares to believe it's flawless. The question isn't how did it fall anymore. The question is who's next, and will they even know what's broken before it's too late?